Hey everybody, it's me, Remy, the comic book poser, and I'm here to welcome you to Enter the Poserverse. Today it's time for me to reveal the books that I'm pulling this week that I think you should pick up as well. So very quickly, let's see what made the list.
Hey! The champ is telling you to do something! Alright, you know what? You know what? You know what just happened? Because you didn't do what he said? You know what? You know what? You just made the list!
Coming in first are my three books that I'm looking forward to from Aftershock this week. The first is the book that I'm hands down the most excited about, and that is Bad Reception number 5, which is written, drawn, and colored all by Juan Doe. This is a very fascinating murder mystery kind of slasher horror book where we're trying to figure out who the identity of Hashtag is, ultimately whether or not anybody will survive the wedding reception on the remote island with no cell phones. The second book that I'm excited about is the only free comic book day book that I know I want to pick up this week, and it's the Dark Arc free comic book day book, and that is written by Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe. I don't know where it lines up in any of like the After the Flood continuity, if it's a small extension of the regular Dark Arc storyline, but that's been one of the stories that I really enjoy. It's the first comic that I have the first full run completed on that I went out and hunted it down, and I'm excited to see that classic team up of Bunn and Doe, since Juan Doe has not been on the After the Flood books. And the third and final book from Aftershock this week is The Man Who Effed Up Time number 4. I'm also very, very excited about this one. I think it's a very smart, witty story. I think Carl Mostert's art on this is very, very fascinating. So I'm excited to see what is next in Sean's life. Next up is AWA. You all know my feelings on AWA. I think they are the hottest publisher from top to bottom, that while everybody else has a book here or there that I really enjoy, AWA has not put out a single thing that I regret buying, and that's something that I can't say, you know, from everyone in the last couple of months. So there are two titles coming out. They're both third issues. The first is Hotel number 3 by John Lees and Dalibor Talajic. This is one where I am missing an issue that I either have 2 copies of number 1 or 2 copies of number 2, but I know my boys over at Comic Burrito are really big fans of Hotel. My girl Nat, who's Gin and Something, is a big fan of Hotel, so I'm gonna, well, you know, buckle down and either buy the book that I have missing if my LCS has it, or I'll order it and then pick it up digitally like I had to do with Devil's Highway, because it's time for me to get on that highway to Hotel Hell. The second is The Resistance number 3, kind of like this, you know, buy your own superhero kind of story. I like the cover that we've seen teased in the last several issues of the dude just kind of staring at the mannequin. Resistance number 3 is written by J. Michael Straczynski, and the art is by Mike Deodato Jr., and I'm just going to pick up the regular A cover, which is a Raza cover. Boom Studios has one book that I'm excited about this week, and it's Wind number 2, written by James Tynion IV and art by Michael Dialanas. I'm excited to get into this story. I missed out on pre-ordering, so I lucked out and got the A and the B cover both sent to me by Bruce and Stephanie from the Bruce Moreau comic channel, or the Bruce Moreau YouTube channel, and then they do Comics and Beer on Friday night, and then I got the other cover sent to my buddy Cole, who's a third of the Comic Burrito, so I'm excited to kind of keep going in this James Tynion indie title that I'm gobbling up everything that he's writing, including his current Batman run. I think it's all brilliant, so I'm very excited to see his, you know, next swing at an ongoing indie series. From DC, there are 3 books that I care about this week. The first is Batman number 5. It's the official beginning of the Joker War. It's, again, written by James Tynion IV. The art is by Jorge Jimenez and Tomeo Mori, and I'm probably just going to get the A cover, the regular Jimenez cover. Number 2 is probably my favorite ongoing DC book of the moment, and it's Flash number 758 by Joshua Williamson, Rafa Sandoval, and Jordi Tarragova, and I'm just going to get the A cover, which is a Sandoval-Tarragova team-up. And then the third and final book that I'm excited about is the Joker Harley Criminal Sanity Secret Files #1. It's a DC Black Label book. I really liked what was going on in the first part of the Criminal Sanity series, that I really think the art is kind of cool. I really think it's interesting to look at Harley Quinn as someone who is investigating the work of an early Joker who's trying to like establish a name for himself and kind of a criminal brand for himself. So I'm excited to see what's going on in Secret Files. This is written by Cami Garcia, Edward Kurtz, and then, as Midtown so eloquently puts it, several artists. So I'll give all those folks credit when I write the review on the blog later this week. And then again, I'm just going to get the A cover to this. It's a David Mag cover. From IDW, there's one book that I think I'm going to pick up this week, and it's Kanto and the Clockwork Fairies one-shot by David M. Boer and Drew Zucker. This was something that was not on my radar, but as I've kind of discovered that the YouTube channel that may be infinitely more into indie comics than I am, the father-son duo over at 1-2 Comic Talk. When I was on the Comic Burritos live stream on Saturday night, Kevin popped in and was talking about some indie books because that's what we were chatting about at the time. And this Kanto title was, you know, one of the big things that he was recommending this week. So I'm excited to hop in on something that someone else has kind of recommended to me in the indie department. From Image, I've got a couple, might pick these up. I missed out on the #1s of both Adventure Man and A Man Among Ye. Both of the second printings come out for those books this week, so if my shop has them, by the time I'll get there, I'll try and pick both of those up. But in terms of new releases this week, there are two that I'm picking up. The first is Decorum #3. It's some of those Jonathan Hickman weird chart goodnessy things with art by Mike Huddleston, and there are multiple covers, but the only one I'm going to get is the A cover by Mike Huddleston. And then the second one is another Image book that I'm really into and really anticipating. Die #12 comes out this week, and that's the massive team up of Kieran Gillen and Stephanie Hans, two people whose writing and art that blow me away whenever I see them working with anybody, let alone together, that it's something that's a really good pickup. The other thing that's on my maybe list from Image this week, I really have enjoyed Tina Horn's SFSX, or Safe Sex. The trade for that comes out this week, and I think if my shop gets it and I flip through it and there's some interesting back matter to kind of match the back matter that's been in all of the single issues, then this is something that I'm going to pick up, especially if it's only a $9 trade. If you've not read this story and you want something that's very sex positive, it's very queer positive, it does something to kind of heighten the struggle that sex workers have in terms of people kind of embracing whether or not they should have that kind of work, or you want a resistance created by sex workers at an old underground sex club to fight the Party, which is a massive purity initiative. It's a good sex positive read in the same kind of way that, you know, Money Shot is, but I think it takes this to kind of a different level in terms of focusing on like the impact that sex workers can have, period. For Marvel this week, there are 4 or 5 books that I'm going to pick up. I still haven't made my mind up about one of them. But in terms of the definite pickups, book #1 is Daredevil 21 by Chip Zdarsky and art by Marco Cicchetto. I have been blown away by what Zdarsky did on that, you know, the first 20 issues of Daredevil. You know, I was sitting at the edge of my chair waiting for that final issue of the first big arc to come out after COVID. That was one of the titles that I was really anticipating a lot. And the way everything all kind of wrapped up, especially with some of the alliances that you saw form at the end of, it was either From Hell or Through Hell, I'm probably wrong about that, but the end of the most recent arc excites me to see what happens in kind of the next wave. And I just love the way that everything was built in his run on Daredevil around the idea of Daredevil having this crisis of faith, right? We learn about the accidental killing of someone. We see how kind of influential religion is in his life and his moral compass. And then, you know, we get the road to him kind of being retrained by Elektra. So we get a lot of some of the greatest elements of Daredevil as a character throughout his storied history, but we get some nice twists and turns on that through some of the things that Zdarsky does in his writing. And the art in all of these books has just been fantastic. The second book I know I'm picking up is Hellions #2. This is by Zeb Wells and art by Steven Segovia, and I'll pick up just the A cover from Segovia. I really liked Hellions #1, which came out like right before the distribution pause. I like the idea of the Misfit Toys team that is now being put together in terms of, you know, another X-Men stable. I want to kind of see how the bad boys and bad girls of the Mutantverse kind of will function alongside functional teams that exist in like the Marauders or in X-Force. Also on the X-Men train, New Mutants 11 comes out. This is by Ed Brisson with art by Flaviano, and the A cover is the one that I'll pick up. There was I think a Scotty Young variant on this one, or someone that kind of draws in a Scotty Young-esque style that maybe I'll pick up if I see it instead, but the A cover is by Mike Del Mundo. New Mutants has probably been the book that I've had the biggest mixed feelings about in terms of all of the new Dawn of X titles, where kind of bouncing back and forth between the space adventure and the drug cartel in Nebraska, and now this kind of new combo arc of the two individual teams. It feels a little clumsy at times just because there are so many different characters that exist only in the world of this title that it's hard to kind of track them, and this is an instance where the shipping delay has made it only more difficult, because instead of having to remember only a storyline, I've got to remember, you know, 15 different characters and how they all can line up and function at different times. The last one that I know I'm definitely getting from Marvel is X-Men Fantastic Four. This is the final of the 4-issue run that's put together by Chip Zdarsky and Terry Dodson, and I'll pick up the A. Dodson cover. I like this idea of what is happening in terms of Franklin Richards getting to choose Krakoa versus choose staying at home. This idea of whether or not mutant self-segregation is something that is beneficial. And again, I love Chip Zdarsky. I had bad spacing in my notes document. The other one that I know I'm definitely getting is Wolverine #3. I love Ben Percy. I love what Percy and Kubert are doing on this book, and I'm excited. I love Wolverine. He might be one of my favorite Marvel characters, let alone members of the X-Men. I really kind of like the potential that Percy has shown in the first 2 issues. The maybe book from Marvel for me this week is the Empire X-Men tie-in. I've talked multiple times about why I'm giving the Empire event a hard pass, so I'll be interested to see how the impacts of the Kree Skrull versus everybody else war might impact the X-Men, but I don't think it will, you know, mess up anything for what will happen in the Ten of Swords event coming in September. From Scout Comics, there are 2 books this week that I think are worth picking up. The first is Vlad Dracul. This is written and drawn by Andrea Moody, and then the co-author is Matteo Stracol, but I like seeing people play with the vampire prime of Vlad Dracul, and even if it's not the full-on, you know, vampire adaptation of Vlad Dracul, if it's like badass Vlad the Impaler, then I'm still on board for that. The second book is one that I already have that is also coming out from Scout. It's Yasmin #1. It's written by Saif Ahmed, art by Fabian Mascolo. This is a beautiful story about a young woman who is fleeing ISIS, and it jumps back and forth between her leaving her home country and arriving in the United States through a refugee program, and is kind of attempting to assimilate to a new way of life in her new, slightly less chaotic home. And I really like the narrative that gets set up in the first book in terms of setting up the story arc for this young woman. And I really think it's gonna be good. I love the number one. I can already tell you going into this week, it's gonna be hard to knock Yasmin out of my top 5 or 6 books because I think it was that dang good. The last publisher that I'm gonna try and pick things up from, and I think my LCS is getting one of them. If they're not getting both of them, then I'll have either one of my Michigan boys pick it up for me, or I'll order it straight from the publisher themselves, is SourcePoint Press. The first book from SourcePoint that I definitely want to pick up this week is Skyland number 3. It's by Fred Packer, Josh Valerie, and Kyle Petchcock. This is about the princess who wants to become a dragon rider, and like her handmaid who gets attacked, and we're figuring out what the significance of the handmaid may be. And then the second one that I want to try and get, but it's the one that I don't think my shop will have, is the Warcorns one-shot. It's by Garrett Gunn, Kevin Stokes, and Nicholas Touris. This is just kind of a wacky and wild book that I didn't know had old tie-ins to the Franklin and Ghost universe, that was something, again, that Kevin from 1-2 Comic Talk was talking about in the Burrito live stream on Saturday night. And this was something that I almost pre-ordered during free comic book week back in May, and to be honest, I don't know why I didn't put the money down for it, but that's something that I'm definitely interested. So that's what I plan on picking up. You'll see this, this video drop on Tuesday, right before you go out to your shop, so I know a lot of you are dropping your preview videos that I haven't watched, or your pull list videos that I haven't watched, because I want kind of me to piece my business together before I look at what everybody else is putting out there. But if you think there's a big book that I am missing out on, that I am not picking up, like I know I got yelled at for reading Zero Middle West, and I know the last issue of Middle West comes out this week. Sorry. But if there are any other things that you think that I should pick up, drop a note in the comments. If you like, again, the way that I talk about books, or the things that I'm reading, and you want to hear me talk about them later in the week, the beginning of the following week, then hit that like button, subscribe, ding the bell, all of those other good things that everybody else asks you to do. I'll do it as well, because I gotta fit in with the cool kids of YouTube. But that's it. As always, thanks for stopping by. Have a good one.